Well, welcome to the June live conversation for the Online Global Forum on ESD for Teacher Educators. I am delighted that our expert today is Dr. Tshepo Mokuku from the National University of Lesotho. Tshepo, we are just delighted you could join us, and we'll be sharing your expertise and life experiences and professional experiences with us. It's a joy for me to introduce Tshepo. I met him in 2002 in South Africa as part of a large United Nations conference and post-conference activities. And I have always known him to be the voice of education for sustainable development for Lesotho. And I appreciate that today he is going to bring his wealth of knowledge and his field experience from the Lesotho context. For we all know that ESD must be locally relevant and culturally appropriate. And Dr. Mokuku is bringing that local relevance and cultural appropriateness to us today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much for that introduction, Rosalind. Ladies and gentlemen, it's really a great pleasure for me to be here, and I'll get straight to my slides and presentation, and begin by indicating that, as you noted in the abstract, the presentation is in 3 parts. I will begin by giving a quick overview of the network that constitutes a kind of a framework of our work on ESD really here in Lesotho. The RCE Lesotho network and its evolution, and how it tends to use different names at different places for different occasions, and then move on to show some of our work in the community as part 2 of the presentation, and then conclude by highlighting you on our work in the formal education sector. So overview, my apology for the wrong slide. This should be, all right, yes, indeed, sorry about that. All in all, I will be working towards attainment of the following outcomes: to identify features of a functional ESD network with a potency to advance ESD. Second, to describe a typical community ESD challenges in the Lesotho context and ways in which an ESD network can best respond to them. In a way, I think we will begin to also relate how such networks could respond to our own local ESD issues. And then reflect on ways in which an ESD network can contribute towards innovative ESD in schools and teacher education institutions. This looks very long, and I will try not to be as long as this table of contents. Part 1, as I said, would be all about looking at the framework within which we have been carrying out our work on ESD here, of a network, RCE network. And then part 2, as I indicated, focused on community and looking at all those aspects. And then part 3, looking at formal education. Well, I'm not sure how many of our members, participants today are familiar with the concept of RCEs, a multi-stakeholder network, as we describe it, mobilized to deliver education for sustainable development. And so in terms of stakeholders, we'll be talking of schools, institutions, NGOs, and so on. I think the idea really being that with that kind of composition, you are able to look at issues holistically. You are able to approach issues in such a way that you have a greater impact. Even as teacher educators, in my view, it's not good enough to be working with our students and our little school environment community, or even other schools, and stop there. I've learned so much personally from the journey of, I remember very well when I was doing my master's degree, my PhD actually, and I happened to be in the process of doing my work, attending government workshops on environment and beginning to see issues from a whole new perspective, and being a lot more aware of the national treaties, for instance, that I think we were not emphasizing so much in my work with my supervisor. So I think really this kind of networking, collaboration is critical in our work as teacher educators. Origins of RCEs could be traced to the UN decade of sustainable development. And these RCEs emphasis is on research and capacity development, which is, I think, what we also are trying to do here in the Lesotho setting, to try to keep research and capacity development in mind in our work. And they are acknowledged by United Nations University, which is based in Japan. Currently, we have about 127 acknowledged RCEs in the world, and this map kind of shows these location of these RCEs, located basically in all 6 or 7 continents, and depending on where we are. And but generally, interacting really and doing some good work in a number, in various ways. Our own network was first established in 2009 as an environmental network, and we, at that point, we named our network SNL, Environmental and Sustainability Education Network of Lesotho. And as I said, it's customary here in Lesotho to have a number of names. We're a Christian country, and so we would have a Christian name and a name of your own ancestry and lineage given by parents. And so similarly, we thought it would be appropriate to have 2 names here for our network. A Christian name of Esnel and a cultural name of Tikoloho Lehae la Rona. Tikoloho Lehae la Rona simply meaning environment, our home. Here we were as a multi-stakeholder representatives in 2009 at the Lesotho-Durham link in Maseru, forming the network. At that point, really, we were not focused on necessarily on global linkages, as in establishing an RCE. We wanted a network that will bring us together. And our emphasis, objectives in terms of the constitution that we developed was on research, networking, focusing on quality of teaching and learning, ensuring that the national plans and policies are in place and are implemented, and exploring new opportunities for members to enhance their activities and to mobilize resources. basically this constituted our objectives as reflected in our own constitution. Then in 2010, we legally registered the association. There were a number of benefits we saw in that. That would enable us to access donor funding, which we thought was critical in a resource-limited country as ours. And then subsequent to that in 2012, we were, I think here, I ought to have written and emphasized the support of SADC Regional Environmental Education Program at the time, which provided a lot of support and awareness about the existence of RCEs and encouraged us to apply and to create one. And so it just became the next step for us because we already had a network, and so we kind of submitted the necessary documentation to UNU to qualify for this membership. And so in the process of doing that, the kind of things that were examined by UNU included our governance, how democratic is it, how well organized is it, the membership, who are they, is it representative of all stakeholders from the business and NGOs and POs, and then also the activities and plans that we intend to carry out. So issues of governance, collaboration, research and development, our intention to transform education were regarded as very important, and they were, in this particular case, focal areas. Our own RCE is faced with a few challenges here in terms of its operation, because we aim to, as a small country, I'm aware that other countries could have more than one RCEs. I'm aware, for instance, in South Africa, they have 2 RCEs, RCE Makana and RCE KZN. In our case, we thought RCE Lesotho would be enough, and then begin to establish chapters in the various districts of the country. And we are in the process of achieving that. We have a committee here as required by I would say the law, because as I said, we are also legally registered. And for legal registration, you need to have executive committee that is elected annually. And currently we face a few challenges of filling positions. Members come and go. But I must say there's a core team that usually does a very good job, really. And so for us here, I think we see an RCE as commensurate with our culture in many ways. That's an adage that we normally say when we intend to do work collectively here. Advocacy, power to negotiate, mobilization of resources, production of new and relevant knowledge through collaborative research. And it is when we do things collectively that we are impactful. Ubuntu philosophy resonates very well with RCEs. The spirit of cooperation, collaboration, sharing, reverence of diversity, rather than diversity for separation and discrimination. Respect for others, humanity and nature. I would rather not get into the questions I've raised here, given the time I have, but one thought maybe could pose the following thought pieces. What professional ESD networks are you and your organization faculty or faculty actively a member or part of? Yes, I think this is a pertinent, it ought to be a pertinent question for even all of us as teacher educators, that we are not working in isolation from the broader context in which we operate. And what benefits do you derive in relation to teacher education from such membership? What challenges have you experienced in the network? In our case, we have experienced the tendency for membership to keep coming in and out, being strong around certain issues of interest at times and working together. But once the project is done, we go apart again. But then all in all, I think the network has sustained since 2009. Keep ahead with part one. I will, if you allow me, a person, to get on to part two, and then maybe we get to entertain questions, or in the process of question two, part two, I have probably questions that are a lot more focused on the ESD content when in this part. And so regarding part two, I highlighted earlier what the issues we are going to be covering. I've been rushing to get here so that I give you an overview of a community that we are working with in an entertaining way, in a musical way. This is a product of some of a work that we did in partnership with Conservation Music NGO based in the United States, and also working in collaboration with a youth network in Tlokwen community, the community that we are working with in this case. I would say this is a community that one can call an experimental site, which we have been working with for quite some time, since 2012, trying out a whole number of things. Yes, maybe not in a very intensive way because of our respective work commitments, but we have been trying out quite a number of ESD work with the community, learning in the process, carrying out research, and engaged in all sorts of activities with our community that has informed us immensely in as far as ESD is concerned. Let me then entertain you a little bit then with a 3-minute or so video, which will introduce you to a piece of work that has been done, a musical piece of work, which was around climate change and water resource. It's in Sesotho, but it will give you an idea of, how the landscape, the people, especially the young people, look like. The music is a genre that is traditional, popular, particularly among the rural communities.
Sorry, Teppo, we still see the part one slides.
Oh, also my apology then. I didn't probably stop it. Yeah. Oh, then I have to stop that. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. That is Tlokwe in a nutshell. And further pictures of the valley. Oh, I love those kids. They were very inspired. They were highly motivated by this video. They are not even an organized musical group. They worked within 2 weeks with this NGO of a very creative young people from United States to produce that beautiful video on climate and landscape culture. This valley is about 32 kilometers squared, and these are some of the pictures of the valley, the catchment. There we go again. I connect so well with this community and so much because this is where I used to visit as I was growing up. My grandparents, this is where my father grew up really. And I managed somehow to work with my team to propose this community as our experimental site. So in a sense, there has been some nepotism there happening. Hope a positive one. And part of the landscape here concerns this cliff that you see here with some markings there. And this is where as we began this project, which started around 2012, we're able to identify our flagship species, a bird called Mogotlo, southern bald ibis, only found in Lesotho, South Africa, and Swaziland. It prefers cliffs of this sort, which are facing east, northeast facing cliffs for warmth. And essentially, I think what we were doing here as a network working with the community was to begin to bring in some scientific rationality behind conservation, so that the youth in this area could have a different look at the birds and the environment, looking at the structures of the birds, how their function, their behavior, and begin to connect the interrelatedness of the living things there in a very practical way, as opposed to, I think, what we experience in our schools here in our setting, drawing. Even questions would say, draw a food chain. Can you sketch this? But in this particular case, we are beginning to do things differently, and working with the youth who are also students here, I think people, they've really been thrilled and excited and learning at the same time. Looking at Mogotlo at a closer range, in the cliff, this is another cliff. I think this is directly facing the east. It's another cliff called Makwabating Cliff. A closer shot at Mogotlo. And then here we are looking at the evidence. We are looking here again at the evidence of existence of owls. In Lesotho we have about 12 owls. No, that's in Southern Africa we have 12 owls. And then in Lesotho in general we have 7. And we happen to have 3 in this particular community. And while we haven't actually seen those or we don't see them most of the time, with this evidence, we keep connecting and noting their existence. And here's one of them, the barn owl, Cape eagle owl, spotted eagle owl. And these have been under threats of all sorts, used for a number of reasons, medicinal purposes, or just fun hunt by youth, but with the kind of approach that we've been using here in the community to begin to illustrate to young people how these are connected, for instance, in the fields, that they feed on them and all that. A deeper awareness and a care has been, efforts have been made to really instill that appreciation. But the landscape is also faced with a number of challenges, such as land degradation that we are still trying to work around. This used to be a good, nice wetland, now eroded due to overgrazing, pressure, trampling, because this would normally be a green, all year round green area. So people would then be grazing their livestock all year round, such as this one. This is still intact, but as you can see, livestock is being grazed on it. And the stream that you have been looking at in the video this is part of what you saw there, a very active stream that provides livelihood, support livelihoods in this community, Morere River. And this has been a stream of our focus in a number of ways. I will indicate as we go on. Our beautiful landscape there that you can see, that we have also been trying to instill a deeper appreciation among people there about its origins, its formation. So that really, at the end of it, it's not about geology for schools, for classroom. It's about people appreciating the environment, connecting with it. I have really been increasingly been very uncomfortable with the way we approach our teaching, particularly in relation to science. Science for scientists. And the community are the people who are living in the scientific world. These contradictions for me creates, it creates a lot of tensions, which explains, I think, why we would then begin to want to fence areas so that people who do not appreciate things fully don't destroy it. It must be science for the communities. And I think somehow our teacher education needs to work with that kind of, those kinds of tensions and find ways in which knowledge becomes beneficial to our communities. We also have been working on wetlands, as I indicated, our streams, and specifically focusing on the stream that you saw flowing in that video, Morere. Morere happens to be the only active stream in that area. When I grew up, there used to be 5 or 4 active streams. Mohlaba Kulubi, Kantan, Mokholo, and then Morere. Mokholo is dead. Mohlaba Kulubi has dried up. Kantana is finished. We only have Morere within my lifetime. So something not right, honestly. And yet there has been education, there has been schools have been growing and expanding. The question then is, what are schools doing? And I mean, I know it's not just schools responsible, but we've been getting more and more educated, more kids going to school, wearing uniforms around. But this is happening in the face of all that, and it's improving, people getting, moving on and getting educated. There's something very wrong there that our education system needs to engage with. And some of the issues we grapple with are the ways in which communities are reliant on the streams and at the same time polluting the environment Here we see ladies here washing their laundry in the same stream that I was talking about. The one that is still, one and only that is still remaining. For some reason, water supply is not good in the community, and the only option they have is to use the streams. These are some of the issues we have been grappling with. Well, so far without much success, but we have a project that we have planned for the next 12 months, which will start in July, that we hope will bring our students, our schools and community on board to address these issues more intensively. Here we're working with communities looking at some of the wetlands that have been degrading. And some work has also been going on in partnership with WESA originally, to raise awareness among our youth in this particular community about the streams and using the macroinvertebrates to determine the quality of the water. But clearly, in our little experience so far, we are aware that this requires more than just, activities of water quality test, because these are issues that also involve options, alternatives for communities to have a more reliable water source. And those would involve certain government departments. And I think we are aware of this, and I think we are beginning to find ways in which we can actually meaningfully address these issues. Really, this kind of work is still very much in progress, and it has not been a panacea for the problems of our water resources, but it's getting us somewhere. And again, what we have been working with here is trying to bring in a Botho philosophy to complement the scientific rationality-based approach to our conservation here. And Botho philosophy, I did highlight. Did I highlight that earlier? Yes, in relation to networks. But what we did here in this community was to document Botho philosophy, working with the elders, and to produce materials, a booklet and materials such as the ones you see on the picture here, to begin to educate people around the philosophy of Motho ke motho ka batho. I am because we are. And to appreciate our connectedness as humans, connectedness as with other living things, so that Botho then begins to be truly what Dudu said it is. Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who defined Botho as my humanity is caught up and bound up intricately with yours. And so in Tlokwen we are saying it is intricately bound with yours and with other living things. We live in community with others and with other living things. And the core to Botho also are the spiritual attributes of generosity, hospitality, compassion, caring and sharing. And I think these are some of the principles that we think are fundamental for sustainability and are complementary to our scientific understanding of our environment. as they are, in fact, you could say, the root causes of inequalities, the root causes or deviation from Hutu attributes is a root cause of the inequalities and the degradation that we see around us. And so we are cultivating in this work that we do, in the materials that you see that the little girl working with, cultivating altruism, kindness, benevolence, courtesy, and concern for others and other living things, respect, care, solidarity, and sacrifice. Other dimensions of our work include ecotourism, and I'll rush a little bit here. And we have established trails. And the link here again with our formal education have been to make institutions aware of the kind of work that is offered there and to invite them to participate. Here you see students of the National University of Lesotho queuing up using their binoculars to observe Mokotlo, and I vividly remember the thrill and the excitement of these science education students in their interaction with the youth here who have been capacitated to work with them on environmental conservation here. And also to, I think, begin to talk about scientific ideas in our language, because that's one limitation that we see in our schools. And I think the materials that we have developed here, the flyers, about owls, about bald ibis, about the landscape, the content that they're therein is such that it's really connecting our learners with the environment, in that it's written in their language. And they are usually very, very excited. This is some of the materials we have developed, the flyers, one on the owls, and all these are written in Sesotho, well, other than the poster here. Some publications have also been produced out of this work, which have been used in our teaching in the university and in our work, ESD work elsewhere. And so this community, in a way, then is beginning to generate a whole lot of benefits, particularly in the field of content, in terms of content knowledge. What are the potential benefits of community-based learning for ESD in teacher education? I'm not sure how best to go about I'm not good at planning time for online teaching, chairperson. So I do not know whether we could say a little bit here. I've been talking for some time now.
Yes. Well, you have a choice to make. Would you like us to go into breakout sessions for about 5 or 7 minutes and talk about your reflection question here about what are the potential benefits of community-based learning for ESD and teacher education? Or would you like to go to question and answer? And I should say that as of yet, no one has posted a question in the comment box for question and answer. But please, everybody, share your questions in chat, and then we'll give them forward them to Dr. Mukuku.
Lovely.
Them so he can hear them. But since we don't have questions yet, shall we go into a conference room for a little breakout? This is a great question for us to all consider.
Yes. Rosalind, I agree that this is a great question for us to consider. And, you know, this could be our question, really. The question.
I agree with you, Lorna, and I was hoping you'd speak up because you're such, you have done so much with this topic. So with Professor Mokuku's consent, Stefan, can you break us into breakout rooms for, 5-6 minutes of conversation?
Alejandro is raising his hand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Alejandro?
Yes, thank you very much, Rosalind, and thank you, Professor Mokuku, for your presentation. And yes, before we go to reflect the questions that you gave us, I would like to ask you, in Latin America, we have a big challenge to implement ESD due to the D part, also development, because we are a long time in our association development with a negative issue. That means that there is a very strong stream that just would like to talk about education for sustainability, but not education for sustainable development. And I ask you, and I would like to ask you, if you have the same challenge with the thematic development in Lesotho.
Thank you for that question, but I think I will need a clarity. You said you have a challenge with the D part of sustainable development, of ESD. Is that what you said?
Yes.
I missed that. The D part of the sustainable of ESD.
Yes, also the concept of development, because it's strongly associated to the economic growth. And the scientists in our continent, in Latin America, so many of them are according that is the perspective that we need to struggle with a perspective that what we need if we would like to implement a concept such as ESD is that to reflect that no more development is needed in the meaning of economic growth, as a growth as a anti or an unsustainable concept. But what is in your country about that? You have the same reflection, or are you accept the concept ESD as a concept that UNESCO, for instance, gave us?
That's a very interesting question there. I would argue that each country, each context would engage with the D as it perceives it fit for its context. At the same time, looking at the broader conception of sustainable development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the future of our future generations to meet their own needs. In my context, the issue really is about food, it's about clothing, it's about shelter, it's about good governance. And that in terms of our education system, we are beginning to really grapple with what it really is doing, what it is helping us to achieve in terms of meeting our basic needs. And that I think is for us the core questions, where we have a high rate of youth unemployment, people attaining degrees that do not offer them jobs. Really, in that context, we are beginning to in most cases wonder and critique and question the quality of our education, which historically has been tied to the United Kingdom, where accreditation, examination, content knowledge were determined in the United Kingdom. And we are beginning to say, as academics, what constitutes relevance? What constitutes knowledge that can sustain us to meet our own needs without compromising the ability of our future generations to meet their own needs? I'm not sure if I answered your question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. As just to reflect on that, that means that you assume the broadland definition of sustainable development, like you mentioned before, yeah?
It's helpful, but you know, we as a broader framework, I guess it does help in terms of being accessible, meaningful to all of us, and yeah. But even to say, are you going the Bratland way? It's a meaningful way of conceptualizing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sustainability. Yeah. And we have been using it largely to guide our work here.
Thank you. And then we have a comment from Ibidani Osundare, and she says, thank you so much to you as presenter. And she really appreciated, oops, sorry, my screen just jumped. Really appreciated that you described the community volunteers working with students and your science education students working with them. And then she asks a little bit about the agricultural standards, both science education based on agricultural standards. And she liked the fact that you're working with so many different organizations together in this activity. So I'm familiar with the agricultural part of the Lesotho curriculum. Is there, are there official standards?
Well, I would say yardstick would be curriculum and assessment policy for whatever we work on here. We do not have any particular standards other than that for our school curricula, and apart from those that are examination specific or course syllabus specific.
Okay, thank you. All right, so why don't we go ahead and break up into groups to have our conversations on this great reflection question here that's on the screen. What are the potential benefits of community-based learning for ESD and teacher education? But I think what we'll do is we'll just leave the classrooms, the breakout sessions sort of open, so we won't be coming together as a group again. So before we go into breakout sessions, I would like to thank you, Dr. Mokuku, for your really fine presentation. I really enjoyed hearing about how the Ubuntu philosophy is combined with scientific concepts and scientific thinking and brought to students in their own language, and how that has tied them to their landscape. That's really a very beautiful outcome from your work. Thank you for sharing that with us. And thank you very much for doing the hours and of preparation for this live conversation and for the thematic unit, which we can all read online. So thank you again.
Thank you so much, Rosalind. Thank you for all the arrangements and the input I received from the participants. Much appreciated, really. But I should say I still have part 3. Then members will have to have to peruse it from the website. So I think that's fine. I had over prepared. I must acknowledge I had gone.
Okay, well then we'll encourage all of you to go on to the Course Networking website and see session number 3, the PowerPoint number 3. Okay, Stefan?
No, sorry, Rosalind, I didn't get it. We are going now into breakout rooms and come back for the 3rd presentation. No. No, yeah. So we go into the 3 rooms. And then you will be 2 or 3 people in one room, and you just talk as long as you want to, and then you decide in your group when you want to finish. We made really great experiences with that format in other sessions, so I think it's a good way to proceed. Yeah. So I start the sessions. Thank you very much. Mr. Mokuku, for your presentation, yes, from my side as well.